So we'll show you right now our new relational reporting engine, the Flash UI that we have that is working against this engine, and the ability to show to create a new report on the web, something that we didn't have before. The new view wizard allows you to create a new report or a new view against three different data sources or three different sources. One is a NovaView model, and we'll speak later what model is. Second one is Excel or CSV file, or analysis services. So I will start to connect analysis services. I'm going to specify a server name directly. We'll do a connect. And then you can say I get the list of databases I have on this server and the list of cubes. Okay? And then when I do next, I can now save my new report. And from this point on, I have a live view against the S cube. If I go back again to the new view wizard, I can select an Excel or a CSV file. And then it asks me to upload the file I wish to upload. And after I select this file, we auto-detect from this file what are the measures, what are the time-related fields. We use the same logic that we use today in our Google application. And actually, we create from this one, behind the scenes, we create a model against which we work. The third option that we have here is to work against a model. Now, here you see a list of models. As you can see, there is quite the list. This list can be it's actually a tree of models. You can create as many models as you'd like. As you can see, you can have a public model and a private model. So each user, if he has the right permissions, can have his own models and continue working with it. We're going to show you how to define a model and how to define a data source that serves the model. And for this one, I'm going to go into the a new item in our menu, which is the data manager, the NovaView data manager. So in the data manager, you can see we have right now data sources and models. Data source is the entity with which, for example, an entity that I define in order to connect to a certain source of data. So for example, if I go right now to the new data source wizard, you can see that here I can select a data source that comes from a relational database, for example. In the data source, I can select the provider with which I would like to work, for example, a SQL server. Here I can write the server name and the username and password. So I got a list of databases. Now we select one of the databases, like fixed income. And now I can write the query that I would like to run against this database. Now I have here the SQL query. I can test it here to see that it works and save it. So what I did right now, I made a data source called AJ. The data source is pointing to a SQL Server database, and it has a query that is defined in the data source. So now I go to models, and in the model I now go to the new model wizard. So I do a create new, and again, as you can see, I have the list of all models. Now, as the list can be very long, what I can do is you see here the filter icon. So if I press this one, I can now type names, and you see it filters the list to let me find an item very fast. So I'm taking the HJ data source, and now I'm saving my model, the model against the data source. So let's call it this one AJ model. Now I see here all the fields that came from this query. So now I can select the fields I would like to have in the universe. Okay, I'll select product description and subcategory and a list of fields, month, promotion key, and so on, quantity, price, extended amount, and so on. So I go to values, and in the values I can now go and define what are my values. For example, quantity is a value, okay, and a product cost, and so on. So I can define a list of values. Now, for each value, I can define its format. I change the format to something else, and I can define the aggregation rule for this value, whether it's a sum, min, max, count, or none. Now I can go to define datetime. So here you can go and define a new time relationship. Actually, what we call in OLAP a new time hierarchy. So I can select the field. Now it's blocked because it automatically detected there are no datetime fields within my query, within my universe. But if I could have selected here a field, then I can go here and select the type of the time relationship, whether it's year, quarter, month, day, year, quarter, month, and so on. So actually I can define here very fast as many time relationship as I would like to have. Okay, so I can also go and define other relationship. So in other relationship, for example, I'm going to define a relationship, a new relationship. I'll call this relationship product. And then I'll take into the relationship the product category key and the product description. So here I actually created a hierarchy, right, that has two levels. Okay, so this one and this one. And I'll do apply. Okay, so I have actually defined right now a new hierarchy. Now I can go also and define if what we call an OLAP member properties. So I can, so I can define, for example, for a certain product key, I can take the fields that are its properties. And then I can go and define a filter. A filter is very interesting. Now, usually what happens is when you define, when you have a huge data source, like with hundreds of millions of rows, usually you don't really need all of them for analysis. We have found many cases in which the users only needed information of the last year or the last quarter or the last quarter against the quarter before, either January to January and so on. So we provide you here the ability to define a list of filters. So you select the field you would like to filter with, then you can select the filter type. For example, you can select selected values. For example, if you know that you would like to limit the model to work only against products in USA, so probably there is a field called the country in which you can select only USA, or you can select from to, or you can select last n periods. So last n periods can be the last n years, last n months, last n quarters, last n days, and so on. So this pane allows you to filter the information so the resulting data set will be much smaller than what is usually needed. So what we do here, we allow ourselves to create much more smaller cubes that fit the data that you'd like to see, instead of creating a big cube, the monster cube that has everything inside. And we give this power not only to the IT people who know Visual Studio and know cubes in OLAP Manager or something like this, but also to a much less, let's say, knowledgeable user in this area. We provide a much simpler UI. So after I define this model here, okay, I did all the changes I would like to do. Now I can go and save it. Okay, so I saved the HJ model. Now, so I created the data source, I created the model, and now I can go back to the new view wizard and select again a Nova View model, and now I will have AJ model here below. Okay, and now what do next? I can save this report with a new name. Okay, and after I give it a name, actually I get my view. So this is actually the whole flow. So the flow again is divided into two. One part is the data manager, in which you define your data sources and your models on the data sources. And the second one is the new view wizard, in which you can actually use these models, or end users. Other users can use the models you've defined here to create their views, or can create them directly against OLAP source.